solution. I'm Ronit. I'm a happiness coach.
And I'm Dr. Nelum. I'm a GP.
And today we're going to talk about osteoporosis. And the reason we want to talk about it is because when you get to a stage in your life when you have menopause, it's almost like, you know, everyone needs to go and do the bone density thing.
Yes.
And so many people have osteoporosis.
Yeah, and the reason for that, Ronit, is that estrogen in our blood, so that's one of our female hormones, is really good for bone health. It keeps the bones strong. And then during menopause, what happens is our estrogen levels really drop. And so that causes accelerated bone loss. So, and when an osteoporosis is weak bones, basically. So, so in Australia, the recommendation is usually around about 70. They do the bone mineral density scan. That's the recommendation. But there are lots of women, and I think you are one of them.
I'm one of them. My mom had osteoporosis most of her adult life.
Yes,
she had it for years, and so when I went to do mine, they basically told me that
you should get a screening test
so I went and did my test, and I had osteoporosis.
Right.
And
that was how long ago?
That was about 8 years ago, even longer than that, a bit longer than that. And so I went and did my scan. They said to me, "Oh, you need to be on medication," and you know that's Ronit. The second they say you need to be on medication, I just say, okay, just
hold it.
I'm going to go and investigate a little bit and think what happens and so on. And so I went home and I went to do some research, which I'm a very good researcher. And I found out that there are several things that are not good for bone. And another thing that I learned when I did my research, I saw a research that basically says that the way the bone is
made and broken down,
it's basically it looks like this.
Yeah.
So it builds that way. So it's like it weaves.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
And what they found out, it was a research that checked soldiers, that they found out that they had a lot of broken bones, but they were young people.
Yeah.
And what they discovered, that it has something to do with sleep.
Right.
And what they discovered is that when you are standing, it builds this bit, and when you are sleeping or when you are horizontal, it builds that bit.
Right.
And if you miss hours of sleep, you could see it on your pee in the morning that you're missing some things in your urine, basically. Right. So the first thing that I discovered was that you need enough sleep. You cannot. Now, I'm a person that meditates, which means I can stay awake for a long time. So I can stay awake. I can sleep 4 hours, 5 hours, and it's like I don't have any problem. I'll get up in the morning and I'll still function.
Yes.
But they basically said you have to have enough sleep.
Yes.
So they said the minimum sleep, for the minimum sleep for the bones is you need to have a minimum of 6 hours. And if you have a bit longer, then it builds it much better. So that was the first thing. And I said to myself, okay, Ronit, make sure that you sleep very, very well. And I was very careful about my sleep. And I adore the sun. I adore the sun, the god of the sun. And and
then what about protein?
I ate the diet that we're talking about, and I was very good with this. And it was the period where I started eating
more protein, more animal protein.
More animal. Yes. It was more protein in general.
Right.
It was like,
okay. Yeah.
I was eating. I don't eat legumes or anything.
Yes.
I didn't eat those things. But I had more proteins. I had very healthy fats and so on.
Yes.
And 6 years later, I mean, I got a message saying every 2 years go and check. And I was like, I'm not going to do this thing. And I think about 4 years later or something like this, I went and did my my bone density again, and this time the doctor says, "Oh, you have osteopenia." Just for you to know, osteoporosis is
very weak bones, and osteopenia is when it's not at the level of osteoporosis, but not as strong as they should be.
Yeah, so I said to myself, "Oh, good, it's working." So I think I'm going to continue doing this bit because it has changed. And the guy that did the check said, well, he was the same guy that did the check before.
Okay,
because
yes.
I went to the same place to do this thing, and he said, "Oh, that's surprising." And he checked it again and again because it was like he wasn't sure. He said, "Well, it usually gets worse."
Yes.
Not.
Yeah. Well, not if you're on. Yeah, if you're not on treatment. But that's what we're trying to get to, isn't it? That you can address osteoporosis with lifestyle.
Exactly.
And
And then between that test and the one that I did 2 years later, I changed the water. Basically,
Right.
I do drink filtered water. And continued with the same thing that I've been doing. And I'm a very active person, so it's like moving all the time and so on. And then I went and did my test, and the doctor said, "Oh, it's gone." So and again, he basically says, "Well, that's weird," and but it's gone. I don't have it. Basically,
Wonderful.
I don't have osteoporosis.
So let's work through what happened, because yes, osteoporosis can be managed with diet and exercise and other lifestyle. So definitely, I think, Ronit, you mentioned the sun, and one of the things that we get from the sun is vitamin D, and vitamin D is very, very important for bone health, and it actually is probably one of the most important. And vitamin D we predominantly get from the sun, and sometimes it's really difficult to get what we need from the sun because we spend so much time indoors. And then when we do go out, we're clothed, okay? So we don't always get access to vitamin D through the sun. You can get it from fatty foods, like animal foods, like proper whole foods that have fat, like fatty cuts of lamb and
which
and
basically
fish
explains this, because I did have a lot of good fat, a lot of healthy fat. Like I didn't have any of the oil, poisonous
the seed oils.
I didn't have any of it during that time, which basically explains. But sun is so important for us for so many things.
Yes.
And we it's basically a wonderful medication. Just go in the sun, spend time in the sun. And I want you to know that your body is so wonderful, it's so sophisticated, and it's brilliant, because if you be in the sun too much, then you're supposed to feel burnt. Like you're supposed to feel a tingling burn in your body that tells you stay away from the sun. So you have a mechanism to tell you when it's too much of the sun. And yes, I don't mean go and bake yourself in the sun. And I remember that during that period, I would go into the beach or go somewhere outside, and at the end of every walk that we did or hiking, I would say, "Oh, I got my 8 hours now," which is really, really good, because that's what we need. We need enough.
Yes. But let's go through the other factors for osteoporosis.
So sun.
Okay. No, not just the sun. It's the vitamin D from the sun.
Yes.
And vitamin D, if you can't get it through the sun, because we are very fortunate, Ronit and I, we have a darker pigmented skin, so we can last longer in the sun. Some of you might not, so you might need a vitamin D supplement.
Yes.
So vitamin D, protein, Ronit. That's
protein.
Protein is what gives us the scaffolding.
Listen, Nelum is explaining to you how that worked.
Yeah, protein is what builds the scaffolding of the bones. So it's really, really important. And we talk about calcium, but actually, if you have enough vitamin D, that absorbs the amount of calcium, that reabsorbs it from the gut. So actually, it's the vitamin D that is important. Vitamin D and protein.
Yes.
So that's the food and the environment. And as you said, sleep and all the lifestyle things.
Exactly.
But also exercise.
Exactly. If you exercise, then the bone basically gets this I think it's the movement
Yes.
that's
Yeah,
your body's
absolutely.
supposed to.
But particular exercise, because I want to talk
Okay.
about particular, because where does osteoporosis cause problems? It's mainly we see it in wrist fractures.
Okay.
In hip fractures.
And by the way, this when you do bone density, this is where they
Yes,
check.
that's
They check
right.
the hip.
And the spine, the lower part of the spine, right? So these are where you can get fractures. So there are specific exercises that you can do that can load these and improve your or reduce your risk of these fractures. So for wrists, it's any kind of to begin with, like wall pushers, chair pushers, any kind of push up, ideally something like that. And for the hips, hopping or stepping. And they say, it was Dr. Paul Mason who I listened to, who's a really good low carb physician in Australia. He says 10 hops 3 times a week. Yes,
That's
is
it.
all you need to increase the strength of your hips.
I follow this guy. Is a doctor as well. He's working with old people, and he says that the problem with old people is that they are actually afraid to lift themselves from the floor.
Yes.
And so he said that when he works with people, he just slowly teaches them to lift themselves from the floor.
Yes.
So he says, even if you feel afraid to do this bit, if you just hop from one side to another side a little bit, then it
strengthens. So that's probably
exactly.
Yes.
So that's his thing. He
Yes.
says, you like old people. He says, I can't give them, too many things to do or things that are risky or all those things.
complicated.
So
Yes.
he basically says, just move.
So that's So 10 hops.
That's it.
3 times a
Oh my
week.
God, it's so easy.
Yes. So and then for the lumbar spine, it's basically if you are walking to carry a weighted backpack.
Okay.
So these are not kind of massively. We're not talking hours in the gym scenario.
Exactly, and I think that's what most people are afraid of. When you
Yes.
talk about exercise, immediately they say, "No, that's not for me." But the truth is that you're home. It's not. It's actually not a hard thing to do. Just to say, okay, when you go into the shower, hop. When you get up in the morning,
Maybe
just
not in the
hop.
shower. What if you fall?
I was like, no, but move from one side to
Yeah,
another
yeah,
side
yeah.
And a little bit, or when you get up in the morning, or before you.
Yeah.
I had this woman that says every time you sit down to eat, just do
Squats.
a bit of squats. And all
so
those things.
Anything like that. So these, so that's the thing. So, there are lots of medications out there that we currently use for osteoporosis, but they do have their own side effects. So not that we're saying not to use the medication, but there are so many lifestyle things that you can do that is going to reduce your likelihood.
Well, actually, I'm asking a question. If you can do this easily, just hopping. I'm serious. What Nelum is saying is that you have easy ways to get there. Why would you buy something? Why would you pay
and put something in your body?
Why?
If you could do this in a more
natural way. It's a natural way
that doesn't have any side effects.
Yeah, do you know that years ago when I checked the osteoporosis, they did say things about being active. And one of the things that they said back then is if you are in the garden, then you are forced to do all kinds of movements that are really, really good for your bones.
And lifting.
Exactly. Lifting things and squatting.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so basically, not to mention the fact that you're touching the ground and it makes you ground a bit better and all those things. But and by the way, this is when I started making back then. This is when I said to myself, no, gardening is not something I do from time to time.
You're doing it regularly.
Basically, my gardening is my space to move, to do all those things. And the doctor that I said to you that says he teaches people to jump, he is into functional medicine, functional exercise. So he claims that it's better to do things that you already do.
Absolutely.
So one of his article was about, I still follow him. One of his article was about cleaning the house. He said cleaning the house is a wonderful exercise. He says if you go to the floor, pick up something, put it in the rubbish bin, you do all
these different movements and lifting
exactly
above the head.
Exactly.
Yeah,
so he
absolutely.
said if you do the natural things that you do anyway, but do it consciously, that you thinking that now you're building your bones, now you're helping yourself, then that is really, really, it's better. He claimed that it's better than standing in the on a treadmill and all those things, because he said the treadmill is usually, it's
a similar kind of
similar
there are
movement.
different, but so I think
for that
I
purpose.
suppose you don't need to necessarily go to a gym or anything like that. There's so much that you can do every day, just moving and so osteoporosis can be managed really well with just diet, exercise and lifestyle measures. So hopefully you enjoyed that.
Yeah, hopefully you will make a use of what we were talking about, so you won't fall into the trap of this osteoporosis problem. And just for you to know, elderly people, the main cause of
falls and fractures and then
you don't want that, because the second they fall,
they break a bone.
Exactly. And this is when everything starts
to snowball
towards, by the way, towards death. So what we're saying is just remember the things that we talked about. You can heal your osteoporosis or you can prevent it.
And start now.
Exactly.
Don't wait till you're diagnosed.
No, you can do this.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.